You can think about the dimensions of a mix in three ways. Top to bottom, which is frequency content, side to side, which is your stereo field, and front to rear, which is the depth of the mix.
I always like to use multiple monitors. I've found that each set of monitors gives me a different opinion and view of the mix. So for example, behind me you'll see my fabulous Aspergers, which are sitting on top of 18 subs. They give me a lot of information. And then my Amphions, the ones with the white cones behind me, they give me a lot of information. The little ref tones that you see, the little black speakers, I don't know if I'm hiding them or not, but they're basically R tones, but a lot better. They give me information. And then if I'm still lacking confidence, I'll go check it in the car. And if I'm still lacking confidence, I'll get one of my friends to drop by and listen to it and help me out. But use every and laptops and earbuds, headphones, all those things come into play. Rule number 2, room treatment is probably as important and sometimes more important than monitors. You can buy a $200,000 set of monitors and put them in a poorly treated room and you'll be very disappointed, probably. I didn't realize that for a long, long time. Probably, I've been engineering now probably 30, 40 years, and it wasn't until about the last 5 or 6 years where I really realized it.
Another thing, just to get our definitions together, you can think about the dimensions of a mix in three ways. Top to bottom, which is frequency content, side to side, which is your stereo field, and front to rear, which is the depth of the mix. And the depth of the mix, the last one is really the toughest one. You know, top to bottom, to get a pleasing complementary set of frequencies for all the instruments to exist in, where it's pleasant to listen to, that's tough enough. Left and right, the stereo field, well, it's kind of an easier proposition. There's a reason we don't put the kick drum and the snare drum hard right, because it takes away the glue of the rhythm section and the punch of the rhythm section. Front to rear is a little bit more difficult, and we legislate the front to rear dimension of the mix via ambience generators, volume, and timbre.
When I listen to your work and listen to your productions and mixes, there's a big visual element in there for me. I see sounds, I don't just hear them. Is that a function of your background or the way you hear music, the way you've always heard music? It is intentional first, right?
I think so. I mean, a lot of producers, especially in rap music, start by programming drums and getting a groove to the song, and that's where they build out their music. But I start with melodies and chord progressions. I'm very much based on music and feeling and emotion, you know? So I strive to create an emotion or create a feeling and then give it to an artist and hope that whatever they write or whatever the writer writes is going to be synonymous with that feeling, and they're gonna both send the same message and therefore deliver what the song is supposed to do. So as a producer, and a mixer, I try to create a feeling first.
Is that where the ambient kind of
100%.
approach to what you do?
And that came from see, my background is an engineer, so I started tracking, and that was very conscious on my part, because as a producer, I wanted to know what I was doing, you know, and I wanted to make sure I could do everything myself if I so choose to. And so when I started atmospheric stuff and, you know, rolling off frequencies and cutting the sample rate down, and everyone assumes I use a low pass, but I'm actually just cutting the sample rate. When I do those types of things, I'm creating space for vocals as well, you know? Like, I wanted people to hear the artist, or Drake for the most part, because that's who I started a lot of this work with.
Yeah.
And I wanted him to be very vivid standing on top of these tracks. So I started pulling out the top end of a lot of the tracks to let the vocal actually fill that space. And I was also just trying to break a little rules, like be creative in a sense of like, who does that? Who actually like rolls all the top off their drums? Like, you would have to be crazy to do that,
Right,
you know?
right.
And so it was sort of like a cool thing to try and attack.
What did going to music school teach you? Like, what did you learn there that you didn't know before?
I mean, they taught me all the basics to like how everything works, signal flow, all the technical aspects. But they really never taught, like, I don't think you can teach how to mix. Like, that was not part of it. But they also kind of like didn't tell you that like when you leave, you're gonna be at the ground level. You're not gonna come in and you're not gonna be like star engineer day one. No one's like, the day you walk into the studio, no one's gonna be like, hey, come in, sit in this chair, record this dude, mix this album, do all that. No, it's like, come in, clean these toilets, go on this food run, like wrap these cables up, and then like in 6 months we'll talk. And that's like, kind of like, one thing I learned, I guess one of my teachers, like the first month was super honest about it. He was like, y'all at best might come out and be assistants. At worst, you're gonna be like unable to find anything and end up at Guitar Center. Like, and he's like, that's the range for 99.9% of you. And once he told me that, like, I started looking for internships while I was in school. I applied to like a whole bunch of like stage internships because I wanted to do movies and video game sound originally. It wasn't really music. And then I was telling you yesterday, the moment for me was when I heard Merriweather Post Pavilion by Animal Collective. I was like blown away by the production and the engineering, just the way it sounded. I was like, how do you get from zero music at all to that? And it's like experimental, but it's a pop album. It's really just like pop music, to me at least.
And so that led you towards Ben Allen.
Which is, I was looking for him, but I didn't know he was at the studio that I applied to. So
Which was May's studio?
Yeah, it was Milk Money Consulting and May Studios, and Solitaire were in it. Solitaire was CeeLo's studio, and May's was Ben's. And I went in there, it said Milk Money Consulting. I was like, I'm about to go like work for a consulting firm? Like, what is this? And I walked in, and he was like, and Brad McDonald, who is the manager there, one of the managers there, was like, oh, here, let me show you around. This is Ben Allen's studio. I was like, excuse me?
So do you have anything else that you wanted to show your fans, people watching, or say anything special? Because we're rounding out this awesome session. So is there anything that you want to convey to your fans or you want to get across?
I honestly want them to understand the importance of creativity. Talent is a wonderful thing, but if you're not a creative talent, then you just have a talent and you're following a trend. Understand what your heart is telling you. Understand what the emotions are. People think that emotions are soft, but they're not. You know, they're not. That's where the best songs come from.